Chapter 23 A Perfect Crime.
The following week passed uneventfully. Mama and Papa were thrilled to have Marvin safe at home again. Elaine was delighted to be regaled with more tales of the outside world. The Pompardays, still gloating over the sale of James's drawing, were busy with their usual activities, though briefly inconvenienced when the timer on the microwave stopped working. Fortunately, Uncle Albert was able to manoeuvre his way through the vents at the back of the oven and reconnect a loose wire. This fixed the problem, though not before the Pompardays had a heated exchange about unreliable foreign appliances, Mr. Pomparday's lack of handiness, and the fact that if Mrs. Pomparday were a real cook, she wouldn't be using a microwave anyway. Their argument ended abruptly when the microwave's clock started blinking again, and Albert slipped triumphantly out the back. Mrs. Pomparday: "Oh, look, it's working now." Mr. Pomparday: "See, I fixed it." James himself seemed noticeably more cheerful and confident. Marvin spent nearly every afternoon in his bedroom, and he couldn't decide what accounted for the change. The success of copying Fortitude, the attention from Mrs. Pomparday over his new talent, the excitement of the pending burglary. Whatever it was, James was happy, which made Marvin happy. When Friday came, Carl and James, with Marvin in tow, arrived at Christina's office at exactly 5:30, as she had instructed. Mama and Papa hadn't even put up a fuss about Marvin leaving the apartment this time, since Marvin had spent most of the intervening week extolling the importance of seeing his beloved drawing again for what might be the last time. The burglary had been arranged for that evening, and now that plans were in place, everything seemed to be proceeding very quickly. Christina greeted them warmly, her eyes bright. When she saw James, she swooped down and hugged him. He looked startled, but Marvin could tell he was pleased. "How's my favourite forger?" she asked, smiling. "Okay," he said. "Ready for a last look at your drawing? It's hanging in the gallery now, right where the original was, and nobody has suspected a thing. Denny helped me make the switch last night. Imagine that, James. All day long, people have been staring at a James Terrick miniature, thinking it's a Dürer." James grinned. "Really?" "Really. When you look at the two drawings side by side, the resemblance is uncanny, and the matting and framing are identical to the original. Denny and I were working on that all day yesterday." "What about the tracking device?" Carl asked. "Oh, the FBI will handle it," Christina said. "But they explained it to us yesterday. Their agent is going to embed a microchip in the matting before he leaves the building." "And that won't set off any kind of alarm?" Carl asked. "When the drawing is taken from the museum?" Christina shook her head. "The microchip can be detected only by the FBI's tracking equipment, not a regular security system. And we don't search visitors exiting the museum, so there shouldn't be a problem. With the tracking unit, the FBI will be able to follow the drawing through the city until it leads you to the thieves," Carl finished for her. "Yes, and hopefully the other stolen drawings." Carl rubbed his beard. "But what if the thief takes just the drawing, not the matting? Then you'd lose the tracking device." Christina pursed her lips. "I know. We discussed that at length. It's one reason we didn't put the device on any part of the frame. Even if the FBI agent took the drawing as it is, it seems likely the next guy would get rid of the frame for easier transport." She pushed her glasses up more firmly to the bridge of her nose. "But we didn't really have a choice. The microchip would be visible if we put it anywhere on the drawing because the paper is so old and fragile. If we put it on the matting, well, we all feel more confident the thieves won't see it." She looked at Carl soberly. "But you're right. It's a risk." Marvin could see that James looked worried, and he was beginning to feel a gnawing pit in his own stomach. "Where's the real drawing?" James asked. Christina smiled. "It was here in my office last night. I can't tell you how many times Denny and I compared the two to make sure everything looked exactly right. Then we wrapped up the drawer and sent it to the vault in the director's office for safekeeping." "And what about the FBI guy who's going to take James's drawing?" Carl asked. "Is he here yet?" Christina glanced at her closed office door. "No, not yet. It's been a crazy day. I've been so busy with the FBI. I just got back here a little while ago. I'm not supposed to discuss the details." She looked at them apologetically for a moment, then capitulated. "Oh, how can I not tell you two when you're the ones who've made it all possible?" She took James's hand and pulled him closer, lowering her voice. "No one can know anything about this. Do you understand, James? This whole thing depends on the public and the underground art world believing that the real Jura has been stolen." Carl, James and Marvin all watched her intently, waiting for her to go on. Christina hesitated. "So here's the plan. Tonight we're open late till 9 o'clock. About 15 minutes before closing, the guards will clear the galleries. Our contact from the FBI's Stolen Art Unit has a Met Guard uniform. He'll come into the gallery with a canvas bag after the public has left." "But don't the other guards know one another?" Carl asked. "Won't they be surprised if they don't recognise him?" Christina shook her head. "Not on a Friday. On weekends and evenings we have several fill-in security staff, so that part should be fine." "And then he'll just take the picture?" James asked. "Right off the wall?" Marvin felt a strange twinge of foreboding. Christina nodded. "He'll have to make sure no one is watching and he'll have to move quickly. The idea is that he'll slip the drawing into the bag and go immediately to the left-hand supply closet in the gift shop. You have seen the little gift shop on the second floor, just outside the drawings exhibit? Well, we've left that closet unlocked for him." "But why?" James asked. "If he's got the drawing, why can't he just leave with it?" "Let her finish, James," Carl said gently. He turned to Christina. "I'm assuming nobody can walk through the checkpoints carrying a large bag, even a security guard?" "It's safer not to risk that," she agreed. "So we'll have a change of clothes for him in the closet, including a suit jacket with an inside pouch, flat, reinforced, waterproof. That's the right size to hold Fortitude. He'll also find the tools he needs to remove it from the framing material and to install the microchip in the matting. He'll change into regular clothes, put the drawing in the inside jacket pocket, leave the supply closet when he's sure the hallway is empty, and exit with the rest of the crowds as the museum is closing." From beneath James's cuff, Marvin could see Christina's pleased expression, as if the entire plan had been executed flawlessly in the few moments she took to describe it. "Wow," James said. Carl nodded thoughtfully. "It's the perfect crime. You seem to have thought of everything." Christina frowned slightly. "Well, I'd better have thought of everything. There's a lot at stake. He'll only have about 15 minutes to accomplish all this without arousing suspicion and without another guard noticing the drawing is missing. But if everything goes smoothly, it should work." James rocked nervously back and forth on his sneakers, and Marvin clung to his jacket for dear life. "Can I see it now? My drawing?" Christina looked at her watch. "Oh, I wanted to go with you. I haven't had a chance to get to the gallery all day. But I can't now, unfortunately. Denny and I have to review everything one more time with the FBI agent." "Go and have a good look. And, James," she rested her hand on his head and smiled at him. "Don't worry. This isn't the last time you'll see your wonderful drawing. I'm sure of it." James looked up at her suddenly. "What about you? Will we see you again?" he asked. Startled, Marvin turned to Christina. James had a point, he realised. All the preparations for the fake burglary were finished now, so there would be no further reason to meet with Christina. Not until Marvin's drawing was recovered. If it was recovered. "Sure we will, buddy," Carl said quickly, sounding embarrassed. "You'll let us know what happens, right, Christina?" "Oh, of course I will." Christina swept a strand of hair off her forehead and tucked it firmly behind her ear, as though all the challenges they faced would be resolved as easily. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Hopefully I'll have something to report this weekend. She smiled at them ruefully. But I have to tell you, these FBI people are not very forthcoming. They won't include me in anything. I can't see their tracking equipment. I can't be with them while they monitor what's happened to the drawing. Carl laughed at her. Well, that's not surprising. We are talking about the FBI after all. It's their job to be secretive. Yeah, I suppose so. And at least they've promised to give me updates over the weekend. Who knows, maybe before too long I'll have the pleasure of introducing you to Justice herself. Christina beamed at them, then hurriedly ushered them out of the office. We can't stay long, buddy, okay? Carl said as they walked down the long hall and through the hidden door into the drawings gallery. I promised your mum I'd have you back by 7, and it's after 6 already. Okay, James agreed. I just want to see it, that's all. In the distance, where the gallery opened onto the second-floor stairwell, Marvin could see the airy marble hall, flanked by statues and softly lit display cases of vases and bowls. A crush of people in winter coats poured through the gallery entrance. Carl's hand landed on James's shoulder. This way, he said, and then crouching next to James and pointing across the room, Look! And there, right where the original had hung, was Fortitude, the girl's curved arms sturdily clasping the lion. Marvin felt a swell of pride. He held the edge of James's cuff, straining for a better view. James reached for his father's hand, tugging him towards the drawing. It's hanging there with all the real ones, he whispered. Well, it sure looks like it belongs, Carl grinned. You're the master. They threaded their way through the crowd toward the wall, then patiently waited for an older couple to step aside. Okay, 2 minutes, buddy, Carl said softly. James nodded, staring at the drawing. Marvin wanted to climb higher for a better look, but there were so many people around he didn't dare. Just as he was growing frustrated with his angled, partially obscured view, James raised his arm to his shoulder, pretending to scratch the side of his neck. Grateful, Marvin quickly crawled from jacket sleeve to collar. Now he was almost eye level with the drawing. He took a deep, happy breath and gazed at his work. And then his heart stopped. This wasn't his drawing. It was Jura's. Jura's? Marvin could tell instantly, but all he felt was confusion. Had he misunderstood? Had they not switched the drawings yet? He was certain that he was looking at the original. As faithfully as he had followed Jura's lines, as carefully and reverently as he'd copied each wall of hair and bulge of sinew, Marvin knew that the intricate strokes in the artwork before him weren't his. A drawing was as personal as handwriting. Yours might look similar to somebody else's, even identical in the eyes of a stranger, but you could always recognise your own. Marvin crawled out from under James's collar. He was fully exposed to the light and air directly in the sightlines of the surrounding museum goers, but he couldn't help himself. This was the original, as dignified and melancholy and fully Jura's as it had ever been. His mind raced. Why was the Jura drawing hanging here instead of the copy? Where was his own drawing? He gripped James's jacket, trying to piece together what could have happened. Christina had said the real drawing was in the museum director's office in a vault. How could this be? Marvin felt a growing sense of dread. He began to run back and forth along the edge of James's collar, frantic. The FBI agent was coming to take this drawing in nearly 2 hours' time. What if Christina had made a mistake? What if she'd somehow mixed up the two pictures? There was a tracking device. Marvin reminded himself, trying to calm down. The FBI would be monitoring that, but now he had to consider the possibility that the tracking device was about to be affixed to the Jura's original by mistake. And suddenly, Christina's warnings about the danger of the plan, the chance that the drawing would be truly stolen and lost forever, filled his head like a drumbeat. That had been alarming enough when Marvin believed his own drawing was at risk, but now It looked like the real Jura might be taken from the museum and whisked into that strange, foggy world of art thieves and stolen masterpieces. Above him, Carl and James seemed not to suspect a thing. "Oh, it's fantastic, James," Carl was whispering. "Everything about it looks real." "That's because it is real," Marvin wanted to shout. He scuttled back into hiding before Carl could see him, awash in panic. How could he tell them? The real Jura fortitude was about to be stolen, just like the other three virtues. "Oh, look at the detail," Carl continued. "To see a drawing, really see it, takes time." "Yes," Marvin thought. "Look at it, James. Look at it and you'll know." But James only stood quietly before the drawing, gazing at it steadily. Finally, Carl said, "We should go. You'll see it again before too long." "No!" Marvin screamed silently. "I hope so," James said uncertainly. He shifted from one foot to the other, hesitating. "Please, James," Marvin prayed. "It's not my drawing." "Come on, buddy." Carl clasped James's shoulder. As James started to turn away, all Marvin could think of was the drawing. He couldn't bear to leave. Not knowing what else to do, he rushed to the tip of James's collar, pointed himself toward the wall, and jumped into the void. Chapter 24, Fate and Fortitude. Marvin plummeted headlong through space for several long seconds. Thump! He crashed into the floor of the gallery, rolled twice and came to a halt. Fortunately, the room's low-piled grey carpet softened his landing. He was a little dazed, but none the worse for wear. Shoe-clad feet milled around him, and James's blue sneakers were fast disappearing in the distance. He knew it was suicide to linger out in the open. He crawled as fast as he could to the wall and waited near the scuffed baseboard. Marvin had to make his way to the drawing, but it seemed too risky to climb the wall when so many people were looking at the pictures. He knew that his black shell would be hard to miss once he started the trek across the expanse of wall. Though his stomach clenched over the danger facing Jura's drawing, he decided there was nothing to do but wait till the gallery cleared out. In the flurry of closing, he hoped he could make his way to Fortitude unnoticed before the FBI agent did. The evening passed quickly. To take his mind off his fears, Marvin occupied himself with people watching, which was one of his favourite pastimes anyway. He counted the different types of shoes that strolled past his hiding place. 12 black loafers, 6 brown loafers, 4 stilettos, 8 black lace-up shoes, 6 pumps, 4 hiking boots, 8 dress boots, 11 sneakers, and 1 cast. He tried to predict how long people would linger in front of the pictures based on their type of shoe. The pumps and black loafers won, with the hiking boots a close second. The sneakers were divided between those who stayed longer than anyone, college students, Marvin decided, and those who rushed off with barely a glance, children. After a couple of hours, Marvin was starving. The floor was disappointingly free of litter, probably due to the museum's prohibitions of food and drink. But a few minutes later, a woman walked by pushing a stroller, and Marvin was delighted to see a Cheerio tumble off her toddler's lap. He studied the movements of the crowd thoroughly before making a mad dash to retrieve it. Then, just as he and Elaine did at home, he wedged his head and forelegs through the hole in the Cheerio, pushed off with his rear legs, and sent it rolling like a hoop towards the baseboard, whisking him to safety. When he reached the edge of the carpet, he extracted himself and settled down to dine. The Cheerio was a little stale, but sweet and crunchy nonetheless, a very satisfying evening meal. Finally, the speaker system chimed, and a woman's voice echoed through the gallery. "The museum will be closing in 15 minutes. Please proceed to the exits now." Marvin hesitated, only a moment, making sure that people were really turning to leave, then scurried up the wall as fast as he could. When he reached the corner of Fortitude's wooden frame, he paused just long enough to look at the drawing, admiring the delicacy of lines that weren't his own. Then he ducked out of sight behind the lower left corner of the frame. He didn't have long to wait. A moment later, he heard swift footsteps approaching the drawing, then felt the picture being lifted from the wall. He held fast as the frame was shoved hastily into some kind of canvas bag pitch black inside. Marvin could see nothing but dark fabric all around him. He looked up, and through the narrow opening at the top, he caught sight of thick fingers gripping the handle, the knuckles sparsely covered in hair. The bag swayed and bounced for a few minutes, then, with a gentle thud, it stopped. This must be the supply closet, Marvin realised. He heard the rustle of cloth and inched up the side of the frame. The darkness of the closet was no impediment to Marvin, who was well used to navigating at night. He could see a short, stocky man moving quickly and confidently, casting aside a navy blue guard uniform. Suddenly, the frame was snatched from the canvas bag and laid face down. Marvin had to reposition himself on its side, flattening his body. He'd forgotten this part of Christina's plan. The frame was about to be disassembled. He had to keep out of sight. He heard the clip, clip of wire cutters removing the hanging apparatus. A knife flashed above him, perilously close. He shrunk away from the blade that glided expertly through the backing of the picture in a crisp rectangle. Marvin prayed he wouldn't be knocked off. The next few minutes were critical. If he got bumped or shaken loose, or worse yet, if the man saw him and swatted him away, who could say where Fortitude would end up? He heard the tear of paper. Abruptly, a pen light flashed in the darkness, sending a narrow white beam onto the back of the picture. Marvin dodged out of sight, terrified. Now he could see the man, his forehead creased in concentration. He had dark hair and an otherwise bland appearance. He could be anyone, Marvin thought, probably an advantage for an undercover FBI agent. The man grunted, tearing off the rest of the backing until Marvin saw the pale matting. Just as the man was about to lift the drawing from the frame, Marvin leapt onto the matting. It felt firm beneath his legs. When he peered over the edge, he saw the yellowed, ancient paper that was surely the reverse of the juror's masterpiece. He could smell it too, the musty scent of centuries. Holding the matting gingerly with one hand, the man set down the penlight. Marvin cowered out of sight, watching him remove something tiny and silver from his inside pocket. It must be the microchip, he realised. The man lifted the matting and turned it quickly and expertly, making a small cut with his knife, while Marvin hugged the edge. It was like surgery, Marvin thought, this delicate task of embedding the microchip in the side of the matting where it wouldn't be seen. After several minutes of manipulation, during which Marvin could hear the man's heavy, impatient breathing, the penlight clicked off. The microchip was in place. Marvin barely had time to secure himself against the back of the matting when a piece of something stiff was pressed against his shell. The drawing swung through the air and glided smoothly into a small, tight space. It must be the jacket pouch, Marvin realised. Fortitude was ready for its journey. It was completely dark inside the jacket, and even Marvin, who was very accustomed to small, dark places, felt a wave of claustrophobia. He remembered the time he and Elaine had gotten stuck in Mrs. Pomperday's eyeglass case when she snapped it shut one evening. How he panicked and pushed futilely against the felt walls, and Elaine had made fun of him for almost throwing up. Fortunately, Mrs. Pomperday had decided to watch a return of one of her shows, and it wasn't long before the case was opened again. Even more fortunately, she was so absorbed in the television that she didn't even notice two shiny black beetles making their escape. Now, Marvin felt the jacket sway with the movements of its owner. He could tell when the man left the closet, when he paused to make sure he hadn't been seen, when he strode through the hallway and tripped briskly down the museum's central staircase. Fragments of Cheerios sloshed uncomfortably in Marvin's stomach. Bouncing along against the man's warm, substantial chest, Marvin could hear the noises of the crowd through the thick cloth. He felt the change in temperature as they exited the Met into a chilly New York evening. A car door opened and slammed shut. The man mumbled an address to someone. Then Marvin heard the rapid beeps of a cell phone keypad. He strained to follow the conversation. "Yeah, it's done," the man said. "Nope, I'll be there in 20 minutes. What's the room number? Okay, see you then." This would be the first exchange, Marvin thought, but not the end point of the journey for the drawing. It was so hard to remember what was supposed to happen, and yet so important to do so. Marvin hunched fretfully in his spot, trying to concentrate, with what seemed like cardboard pressing against him. First, the FBI agent was supposed to give the drawing to an intermediary. Wasn't that what Christina had told them? A contact in the underground art world? Then it would be handed off to the real thieves. The FBI must be tracking the drawing's path, right? Maybe everything would be okay. After all, the plan had been to follow the trail of the fake drawing and ultimately retrieve it. Marvin thought of Christina, of the danger she'd mentioned, the chance that they'd never see his drawing again. He thought of James and his uncertainty when he looked at the drawing for the last time. Then suddenly, and in a flood of longing, he thought of Mama and Papa. A destination 20 minutes away would still be in the city. But what if the drawing was bound for someplace else? And what if Marvin was stuck here, its unwitting companion and helpless protector, unable to escape? He might never see his family again. The risk he had taken became shockingly clear. His fate and fortitudes were one of the same. He shuddered, feeling the dull thrum of the car's engine as it made its way through the busy, tired city.